Thanks for staying with News at Prime tonight. President Cyril Ramaphosa has met with Eskom executives and members of his cabinet to discuss the rolling blackouts. He says acts of sabotage led to South Africa's first stage 6 load shedding. The rolling power cuts have impacted several industries, including tourism. Let's find out what the impact has been so far. We're joined by the Tourism Business Council of South Africa CEO, Tshivhengwa. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Tshifhiwa. Firstly, do you believe the reasons that have been given by the President and the Eskom executives on why the country has not had power in the last week?
I mean, look, we've been going through this situation for the past, 10 years? I think load shedding started sometime 2008, 2009. And, there's been many reasons that have been given, for the situation at hand. And for us in the tourism space is to say, we need to have certainty, within this space. When we talk about energy and energy supply, and for us, when we go out there to the international markets and we try to convince tourists to come to the country, and we promise certain things to happen, we need to ensure that we can deliver those things. And electricity plays a big part in delivering, the promises that we make, to both overseas and domestic, tourism makers. So it's quite important, as much as we don't get involved in the matters surrounding Eskom and how Eskom is run, for us is the fact that, we need to have certainty around energy and, for us to deliver what we promise the visitors.
Can you have certainty without transparency? Because when you look at the number of days that these blackouts have been taking place for, the extent to which they have worsened, only today are we now seeing a more public statement that's being issued. Do you think that South Africa itself, who form part of those that have to sell South Africa to the rest of the world, do you think that we're being told the complete truth?
Well, unfortunately, we were not in that boardroom. It would have been interesting, to be in there to find out what exactly is going on around the issues, of power. But for us, like I said, it's an issues around, how do we ensure that we provide certainty and proper information to the markets? And there's a reason for that. And the reason for us is to ensure that when we sell now, we sell for the next year, 6 months or 18 months. People buy now to come then, and we tell them all good stuff that we're going to do for them. Now, when you start to have lights not working, and when you start to have, gridlock of traffic, and you promise that tourists that you're going to take them to, a particular destination or a particular attraction, and you cannot make it to that particular attraction, they may come back and say, look, you told me this, and you deliver X. You didn't talk to me about, load shedding. And our people are going to say, well, we didn't know that it was going to happen at this particular week. So it becomes problem.
So then what do you do in the interim? So, this week we've seen actually quite a number of travelers. Some of them have been caught up, especially those in Pretoria. They've had to deal with flooding and load shedding. So for those who are in the country for the first time, certainly not a great impression. But how do you deal with those answers when, in fact, you've been told by Eskom that, look, we're going to have load shedding for the next 2 years. Everybody must just suck it up and live with it.
Look, it becomes difficult, when you're dealing with, customers, per se. And especially, like I said, people that you've promised experiences and adventurous things that they're going to be doing in the country. So you have to go back. And one thing that we do well in the tourism industry is that, we try to mitigate, the risk of being sued by a client, by, replacing certain experience by another experience. But it doesn't help when you don't have, floods is different thing. It's an act of God. You can explain that to a client. But when you don't have electricity or the cars are not moving fast enough on the road, it sort of brings, a new element into it. So for us in the industry, what we have done over many years is to try to prepare ourselves. But large businesses were able to prepare themselves by spending more money, which means the operating cost goes up. And if you have a big hotel and you're running those on all the time, the cost goes up. So for smaller businesses, that's where the problem lies, because they cannot afford to continuously fund, this extra, operation cost to make sure that, they have lights You know, they can go to those destinations that they want to get there, provided when they arrive at that particular destination, there is electricity, you know, to go to the mountain or to catch a cable car up to the Table Mountain. So it becomes very difficult to really, you know, offer that complete, you know, package, you know, that we've promised out there. So we have made some headway from the big business side, but the small business side and those tourism attractions that are in rural areas where we want to see growth, you know, they are suffering. And I've had some few calls coming in to say, you know, it's really not working out in those particular areas. But we need to solve the situation. We do support government in solving the situation. We don't know how to solve it. We're in the tourism business. Yeah. All we want is the service to be provided so that we're able to provide it to our clients.
So let's talk then about the real impact of part of what we've seen in the last week has been on the tourism sector. What are the kind of numbers that we are experiencing, not just of tourists that are coming into the country, but I imagine that a lot of local people moving around amongst the different provinces. And to what extent would you say that the industry has been affected by the last week?
Look, it has had a great impact. You know, a lot of big companies, you know, have been, you know, running generators to run those big hotels. A lot of tour operators that are transporting people have had to leave earlier or have had to find new routes or spend more money on petrol and so forth and so on. So it has had an impact, but it is something, you know, that, you know, we can only quantify it as we go in terms of what is the damage to the brand, you know, South Africa per se. But we need to make sure that, you know, we turn it around. That's why we are more focused on how do we turn the situation around? How do we have certainty? How do we communicate the right messages out there, you know, in the world to ensure that people look at us and say, you know, we're still in business. You know, we have targets that we've set for ourselves. And for us to achieve the targets that we set for ourselves, we need certain things to work. Yeah. And electricity is one of those things that we want to work. The rest of the stuff as a tourism industry, we know how to deal with it. We know how to deal with the complaints that may arise from the establishments. You know, we know that now, you know, coming to the festive season, there are certain things that we need to be doing to make sure that, you know, tourists, both local and international, you know, have comfort within the establishments and they're able to visit those attractions. So we need that certainty from Eskom side.
It sounds to me then that the way in which Eskom has been communicating on this matter has certainly created a gap. It sounds to me that there is a vacuum even from your end around what to expect in the future. And I wonder then, how do you begin to resolve that issue in particular? Because it's a leadership issue. So with who do you take it up and how do you begin to take it up?
Yeah. Look, we're glad that the president has gone to Eskom and talked to Eskom, and there are a few things that are being done, you know, to mitigate the situation. What we need, you know, especially when we go out there to the international markets, is to ensure that if we're going to have load shedding for the next 2 years, let's have it scheduled so that we know how to operate our businesses. Let's have it, if it's a permanent load shedding, it's stage 1 for the next 6 months or for the next year. Then we're able to communicate it to the clients and say, look, these are the situations that we have in the country. This is how we're going to deal with, you know, your trips. Then we're able to do that. But that's not an ideal situation. And we should remember that we're competing with other countries. You know, tourists have choices. They can either come to South Africa or many other countries, you know, around the world. You know, some of the countries are offering similar things. So we are all fighting for that one customer. And when we get them here, we need to deliver. And electricity makes us deliver on things that we need to do, be it cooking. You know, they want those cuisines, you know, and they want to make sure that they visit those markets and be able to shop. But when you have this constraint on electricity, you know, you end up not doing certain tours because you don't want to be stuck at a certain place. So it limits the offering that we have on the table. And we surely need to, you know, figure out the way forward around this. And like I said, we're in the tourism business. We would love to, you know, Eskom to do what Eskom do so that we're certain.
Sure. The last time you and I spoke, you were telling us about the amount of money that government is going to be putting into some of these envoys that will now have to travel different parts of the country, selling the South African story and telling the rest of the world that South Africa is open for business. I wonder then, when things like this happen, the extent to which you hold off on some of that messaging, because it simply would not be true.
Yeah. Look, it becomes a hard sell. I'll be honest with you. When we go out there in the international markets, and, a lot of people will think, oh, these guys deal with. Now we have issues surrounding, Eskom that we need to talk about and assure our clients. We've got, other things that, we have no control over, like issues around, the flights, as you said. So it becomes a hard sell. But we are determined as a tourism industry because we know how important this industry is. And we know how we can impact the economy. We know how we can grow jobs. And we are committed. And we will work with the government, with the president, and with the Minister of Tourism to make sure that, we deliver on what we said we're going to deliver. And the private sector is fully behind, whatever we need to do to solve the problems that we have. We live in this country. We're selling this country. We have no other South Africa to sell. We want it to work. And we are committed to making it to work.
I tell you what, you certainly have your work cut out for you. And the impact on small businesses, of course, can't be overstated because they're the ones that suffer the most when load shedding takes place because they have perhaps the smallest cushion in terms of what they can provide to help keep operations afloat in that situation. Tshifhiwa Tshivhengwa is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council. So that's also where I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. As you can hear, my voice is a little bit shaky. So the Tamin Gubeni is going to be stepping in on set after the short break. I'll see you again later in the week. Good night. But News at Prime, of course, continues. We'll be in conversation with a new speaker of Johannesburg.